guys, and making sure that everything's going as I wish it would. It's not far away. Too loud? Okay, I'm gonna run the music very, very quiet. It's just there to have background noise. Shouldn't be too loud. Let me look at my settings real quick. This should be fine. The balance should be pretty good. I'm gonna listen to my own stream for a second to make sure, but this should be fine. Hide that. Let me just head to my page and then we'll be good to go. Alright. So, let's see. Let's find this muted. Okay, I'm gonna play it and let's see what this sounds like. Let me just head to my page and then we'll be good to go. Okay, that sounds pretty good. Great. Let me just pop out these things so I can watch chat and whatnot with you guys, and then we'll be starting ourselves very, very soon. 1 second, guys, and then we'll be good to go. Close. Actually, let's leave that one open. Yeah. 1 sec. Okay, there we go. This should be happy. Alright, guys. I have my document open with all my notes. So, just so you guys know, as you guys are tuning in, a couple hundred of you right now, the way this is going to work is I'm analyzing 2 games from Battle of the Atlantic, 2 games that I thought were pretty good representations of how to play League. And they'll also mirror, I think, most games that you guys would play as well, the standard 2-on-2 lanes, things like that. And so basically my goal is just to talk to you guys about how these teams are going about playing, how they're winning games, what they're doing to get themselves ahead. And that should be pretty reasonable. It should be pretty good for you guys. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit sick, so my nose is going to sound a little bit weird, and my throat, I'm going to keep clearing it over time, but... Oh well. The other weird thing is, because I'm casting off the VODs, you're going to see Jat and D-Man. I'm the one talking. There's actually not a really good place for my webcam. I mean, I guess I could move it around. It's just bad. I don't even want to... I don't know. I'll just cover D-Man's face for now. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know. It'll look janky. It's the first run of this. Okay. So, let me actually tweet real quick that we're going so that other people can tune in if they want, and then we'll be good to go. Maybe we should be pretty happy. Alright. Alright. Gonna do some analysis of... There's the link. Stream live. Gonna do some analysis of Alliance vs Dig 1 and TSM vs Lemon Dogs 2. Alright. There's the tweet. And then, yeah. Alright. So, here's what's going on. So, I want to cover 2 things, actually. So, the first thing I want to do is actually talk to you guys about 2 main parts of League of Legends that I want to describe to you guys that are going to be kind of relevant throughout this entire game, because I probably won't keep talking about them. I might reference them. Okay, number 1. The way that most teams are playing League of Legends right now is that once your team is winning, you do a 4-1 split. 4-1 split means you send your top laner, typically, and he's there to be the best duelist possible. So, good duelist that pushes well, or can rejoin the team and hold a push, but most typically pushes well, and is very good at surviving getting ganked. This is why we're seeing Mundo, Renekton, Shyvana, and Rengar so much, is that they are good duelists. They hold their lane very well without any help. They're resilient to getting ganked in the first place, and they can create a lot of pressure on the map to pull a lot of attention if they're winning. This is why we're seeing these champions a lot. So number 1 is the 4-1 split, and they'll occasionally show back up with their team, or they'll open up a lane so that their team can show up to it later. So there's the first topic I want to address. The second topic is, if you listen to my stream a lot, it's something that I call bookkeeping. I sometimes say it while casting as well. Bookkeeping is basically doing things that aren't very exciting or difficult, and they're really low risk or no risk, but you do them because not doing it is worse, basically. That sounded really vague. I'll try to be a little bit more specific. There's two main bookkeepings that I see. So number one is, hey, maybe I'm low on health on mana, or I've got a lot of gold. If I recall and buy a bunch of items and refill on health and mana, that's bookkeeping, right? Now, anytime you do bookkeeping, there's an opportunity cost. You are out of your lane, or you're out somewhere else on the map for like 30 seconds or so, right? So again, I'm Lucian, I'm level 7, I have 1,550 gold. If I recall and buy a BF sword, I've given up control of my lane for 30 seconds, but I basically bookkept. I spent my gold on items so that when I come back, I'm stronger. That's one of the main ones, and it's recalling for items basically, but this also means we pushed down the mid lane and killed your inhibitor, but we're all really low on health. We need to go bookkeep and refill our health bars. Because otherwise we're not very useful on the map, right? You can do bookkeeping in terms of like making sure you're healthy enough so that they don't counter Baron or something. And I'm sure you guys have seen some games where a team will push, then be at like 12 HP, leave late, and the other team steals Baron, right? Team loses inhibitor, takes Baron right after because the other team did late bookkeeping. They couldn't stay on the map anymore, they were too weak, and gave up map control for it. And so depending on when you do your bookkeeping, that can be really important. That's again a topic I want to address. The other kind of bookkeeping is in terms of just minion waves. It's like saying, hey guys, there's like a 2 or 3 wave stack coming down to our top lane turret. Someone go clear that because it's 3 waves of golden experience and it's going to be a lot of turret damage that we don't want to get. Again, it's not hard to do, right? You show up and press a bunch of buttons and the minions all die. And of course, there's the advantage of, right, in the first case it was having full health and mana and some items. In this case, it's getting a bunch of golden XP. But again, the downside is that you are somewhere obvious for 30 seconds and the other team can do things when that happens. So that's bookkeeping, right? That's the thing I wanted to define for you guys because we'll talk about it more over time. It's doing low risk things that are very obvious to your opponents but really good things for you to do, but it just means that you're somewhere else on the map and that can be a problem. Okay. Bookkeeping and 4-on-1, the 4-1 split. Those are just two things I want to talk about. Let me make sure that thing is fine. Yeah, Twitch chat's open, watching the stream. Okay, so we're going to start with Alliance vs Dignitas game number 1. So, let's start with Champion Select. And I'm going to talk for 1 second before we resume the video. So, the pick and ban phase is something I really enjoy and I like thinking about. To me, there are basically, there's more or less 3 types of bans. So number 1 is strategic bans. And these are things that say, look, we know that you guys like running poke comps. If we remove, let's say, Nidalee, for example, we really limit your ability to run poke comps. That's strategic. Nidalee might not be the most powerful champion. She might not be OP. She might not be a heavily contested pick. But if you know that like your game plan is countered by a poke comp, you might ban poke champions. That's number 1, strategic ones. Number 2 are one-sided bans. These are not necessarily about the strategies that are played, but they're champions that you know your opponent likes to play that you don't like to play yourself. These are really, really common, one-sided bans. You see these a lot of times against junglers. You see these a lot of times against mid laners when they have very different champion pools. You used to see it a lot against CLG when like all they played was like Vayne and Caitlyn, right? And you see these pretty often. The other one, and this is another really common ban type, is high impact bans. These are the champions that just are heavily contested, and we'll actually see this happen in this game. So let's actually start the champ select, and we're gonna go through this. So, right, so the Dr. Mundo ban, pretty standard stuff. The Kassadin is actually not really a one-sided ban because Skara plays it too, but it's still a really high-impact ban and a strategic ban because a lot of Alliance's power, at least back when they were evil geniuses, was frogging, dumpstering the world, and everyone supporting him. And removing a lot of high-impact champions like that is important. Now, the next 2 bans for Dignitas are Lee Sin and Evelynn, and those are very much like, it's kind of like half high-impact, half one-sided bans. Now, Crumbs plays those champions, but they're Shook's best champions. And they want to remove those from him. It also becomes, in another interesting game, which we talked about a little bit, which is it creates very obvious pick trains. So what's going to happen here is Dignitas is actually going to give Alliance an obvious first pick, and that's going to be Elise. Dignitas knows is going to happen, right? They spent their last 2 bans on junglers and said, yeah, go first pick Elise, because Dig wants other high priority champions that haven't been grabbed yet. And let me actually talk about this real quick. So, you can oftentimes predict your opponent's picks by knowing the hotly contested champions. So for junglers, that's like Elise, Lee Sin, and Evelynn. Those are like the top 3 most contested junglers that are really big. They're really common. Jazz not saying much. He's muted. So actually, I'm gonna leave the screen on because you can see the picks and bans. But there's kind of like a sort of a tier list, like an unofficial tier list among competitive players, where it's like, yeah, in the jungle it's like Elise, Lee Sin, and Evelynn are the really top junglers. For the top lane, it's like Mundo, Shyvana, Rengar, Renekton. Like there's like 4 that are really big, but like Rengar is global banned right now. Mid lane's actually really wide. For AD carry, this is patch 3.14. It's basically Jinx, Lucian, and Sivir. And so when you get into this situation here, when there's only 1 support ban, there's very few mid lane bans, and the mid lane champion pool is very wide. There's very few top lane bans, but the top tier of jungle picks is very constrained. Dignitas basically forces Alliance into first picking Elise. And they basically know this is going to happen coming into this. In fact, teams are finally starting to learn this. I thought people should have been doing this all throughout Season 2 and 3, but it seems to be happening more finally now in the preseason. And we know you'll first pick this. Now we get 2 high priority picks ourselves. This gives Dignitas Shyvana and Olaf. And Shyvana and Olaf are 2 really, really good picks. But the thing is also, this now tells Dignitas' strategy, right? Dignitas wants Sivir at this point. They want Sivir because they're running a double bruiser team. This is a very specific team comp. We're going to have 2 really, really strong frontline dudes who will rip your team apart. Shyvana and Olaf will do a very good job of this. They're very strong in that situation. And so Alliance basically knows right now, like, Sivir is the likely pick. Now, it's really convenient for a couple of reasons because, one, the big counter, or I guess like one of the best sort of picks against Sivir is Lucian, and Lucian's already a high priority pick right now. Teams will blind pick Lucian in the AD carry spot, but this gives them even more reason to pick up Lucian, and it lets them hide more of their picks. Basically, Alliance gets to counter pick now. They know the standard sort of counter pick to Shyvana is Renekton because Renekton wins the first 9 levels in lane, and they know Dig will go for Sivir, so they grab Lucian because they know Sivir's coming up. They've grabbed the counter lane here. They've already grabbed their jungler, which means now Alliance can save their mid lane for an important strategic pick. They can save their support for an important strategic pick, and they've counterpicked every single lane so far. And Dignitas has to pick the rest of their bottom lane or their mid lane next, which means Alliance gets to fully counterpick the bottom lane or fully counterpick the mid lane while still being able to pay attention to their strategic options. It's a really good play here by Alliance. Their picks 2 and 3 were really, really smart. So Dignitas knows they have to blind pick something, whether they blind pick their support or they blind pick their mid laner, and they go for Gragas. Now Gragas is fine because Gragas is really powerful. He works well into almost any matchup. And the funny thing is here, they could have gone for like Orianna. And in an ideal world for Dignitas, Orianna probably would have been a stronger choice because it would have given them, I think, better strategic options down the line. But if you pick Orianna, your opponents counterpick you with Gragas, and then you lose your lane at level 6. And that's not something that Dignitas can really afford. So they pick a safer lane of Gragas who has no really rough matchups. In fact, what Phreak ends up picking should have given Scar a good lane. He just doesn't play it properly enough. But here's like a really good element here is Dignitas now have this Sivir plus double bruiser comp. Gragas also gets to help create chaos so that they can just destroy somebody with Olaf and Shyvana, and even some damage from the Sivir as well. And so Alliance says, okay, well, you guys don't have very much engage yet. You have Gragas, it's okay, but we know you're trying to run bruisers, and you have to run at us to do anything good. You have to just sort of run. Like, Shyvana has ulti, it's alright, right? Like, they have some move blocks in Dignitas, but there's no great engage from Dig right here. So Alliance says, well, you know what? We've already got Lucian. Let's go for kind of a poke comp. And in fact, what they do here is really interesting. Alliance is really early game focused. They're going to pick up Zillion and Neely together here. And their only late game power here in this comp is the Nidalee. The rest of these guys are picked for their early game, and the pressure is on Alliance right now to make things happen early on, right? Let's think about this lineup here. Elise, super god tier early game jungler, and of course she's picked a lot, but she's not got the same late game as Olaf. Just true facts right here. Renekton versus Shyvana. Renekton wins the first 9 levels in lane, falls off more late game, at least compared to Shyvana. It's going to have a harder time. Right, again, Lucian picked mostly for his laning phase, of course, still very strong, but he's an early mid-game spike champion. You often go Trinity Force on him. You try to push down turrets. Zillion's a very oddball pick, but the interesting thing with Zillion in this comp is it gives them a level lead. Right? Alliance are so early game focused. They want to win in the first, like, get ahead in the first 15 minutes because they're going to start falling behind after 25. Like, on top of just being a champion that Kazmich plays a lot, Zillion actually works into this comp really well and lets them push with a level advantage. You'll actually see this come into play later in the game. Now, here on Dignitas' side, what I would have liked to see is a Leona, because these guys have such little engage. All they can do is run at Alliance, and Alliance are clearly with a poke comp here. Alliance are clearly going to get outscaled, and they're clearly a poke comp, right? And they're going to hope to get a huge advantage in 20 minutes or so. For Dignitas, if they get to late game, they basically win, because they will outscale. A couple of things could change that, but generally speaking, they would outscale. But also, there's no way for Dignitas to stop like a 15-minute siege if they go for Karma, because they can't really get in on Alliance. The number of plays that Dignitas can make, because they can't really siege and they can't really dive and they can't really initiate in the jungle, all Dignitas can do if all they have is movement speed is force dragon fights. That's the only way Dignitas can actually make a fight happen, which is really, really, really risky for them, right? Olaf not nearly as good of a ganker as Elise, on top of the fact that, like, Renekton and like everything on this Alliance like lineup is pretty easy to get away from ganks with. There's actually not a lot of options for Dignitas outside of waiting for late game and then hoping you can run at them better than they can run at you or run away from you. So both these teams really have singular goals in mind. Alliance is early game, siege, win. Dignitas is like, hope we don't lose, win later. That's basically the way these teams are constructed, and now we're going to see how this plays out as we get ourselves into the game. So I'm going to scoot forward a little bit in this video, and let's go over to level 1s. Before we move on, anyone have any real quick questions they'd like to ask about this game? Because I'd like to answer if you guys have any other questions about what I asked about here. And I do have like a small delay in the stream, unfortunately, so I'm going to get your questions a little bit late. So I'm wondering if there's anything you guys would like to know that I should cover a little bit better. Actually, let me see if I have a cough drop so I can grab that real quick, because I know my throat's sounding weird. Not on me. I can grab one later. It's not a big deal. Yeah, this game was chosen because it was, I think, really interesting strategically, and it shows really how to play the game properly if you're really relying on early game lead. And I think it works pretty well. Actually, I'm going to be right back real quick. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to... whoops. I'm going to grab a cough drop real quick because I'm not sounding very good. I'll be back in like 1 minute, guys. I'm sorry. Alrighty, yeah, let me grab one of these, then I'll take a drink of ginger ale, because ginger ale's awesome, and then we'll move on. Why did Alliance start with less gold? Is because their support Kazmich went deep in the defense tree, whereas Kiwi Kid went deep utility, and utility has a mastery that gives you 40 bonus gold at level 1. And just because of rounding, that actually bumps it to 2.4k instead of 2.3. So you can always tell if you ever if you're ever watching a game. Oh, sorry, I should switch back to the proper feed here. If you ever see 2.3 to 2.4, those numbers mean someone went deep utility. That's like literally what that means. Just FYI. Wouldn't taking Sivir away from Dignitas have been a better idea than picking Lucian? I don't think so. just because I believe that Alliance are able just to win their lanes, and it's okay to play the game that way. Like, I actually don't personally like when teams come into a game saying, we're just going to take each other's picks back and forth and then have this weird team comp at the end of the day that's like a Frankenstein of things we wanted to steal from you and things that kind of work for us. Instead, Alliance really focused down the line on picking their own champions. Again, every single champion they went for was a counter pick. We're going to counter pick you top lane. We're going to counter pick you in the mid lane, kind of, at least strategically. We're going to counter pick you in the bottom lane because we know what you're going to run. As I said, we're going to win all of our lanes and then turn that into something else. And I think that's actually the right way to play champion select and to play competitive League of Legends. Because that way, actually, I'm going to... Oh, my webcam is on... There we go. I'm going to put this here because that way I can still be on screen for you guys. That's an okay way of going about it. But yeah, I think that's the right way to play League of Legends. Because then you're actually running something you think is going to win. You predict your opponents, you know what they're going to run, and you start picking around their comp and beating it in Champ Select, which I think is really interesting to watch, and I think really smart for teams to do. Okay, let's go into the game now. First thing we're going to watch is the warding patterns of Alliance, because the actual first 4 minutes of the game are completely dictated by Alliance's wards, interestingly enough. When the game has standard 2-on-2, 1-on-1, 1-on-1 lanes, the junglers are the players that make all the opportunities happen. At very top tier of play, you basically never have free kills in lane. It's always based on the jungler showing up for a gank or showing up for a counter gank or creating pressure. And so Alliance puts one single ward down in the Wraith Brush. Now Dignitas knows this ward went down because Crumbs tossed an undertow, spotted Alliance, and knew, oh, there's a ward in Cosmic's inventory. He's going to ward the most likely spot, the Wraith Brush. Yep, he puts it down. And so Crumbs knows this ward right here has been put down. He knows that ward exists. He knows it. The thing is, it doesn't end up mattering because another couple of good plays are here. Wicked actually will trinket ward the red buff. If you watch him on the minimap down here, he's going to trinket ward that, and that becomes really important because Crumbs outplays the ward in the Wraith Brush and doesn't outplay that one. Cruz is also going to ward this. He wants to know about invades. That's another very smart ward. If you lose control of your jungle, that's another good ward to put down. Okay, there we go. Alliance has enough knowledge of the jungle of Dignitas that they can make plays because they will know where Crumbs is. Game starts out pretty normal, right? Whatever. Blue buff gets started, Crumbs takes that. He burns Smite early. He feels pretty safe. That's all fine. Shook grabs his own blue buff. That's all fine as well. Hits level 2, whatever. Standard level 1 setup so far. These guys get to lane. Cosmic's heavy defense tree. These guys are kind of just trading farm right now. There's not that much going on that's crazy. So we kind of have a default holding pattern here. So what we're going to watch actually is Crumbs and Shook. So Crumbs, I talked about this before. I'm going to pause real quick because I only have the minimap, unfortunately. Crumbs, so he knows there's a ward right here. After he killed the blue buff, he went around, went up, through here, and then down to his red buff. Now the problem is, this has been trinket warded by Wicked. So, okay, Alliance knows exactly where Crumbs is. They know he is very far away from getting to gank, and so they're... Oh, it actually does show up. Whoops, my bad. But yeah, there's a trinket ward right here that saw Crumbs go into this. So they know. Crumbs put the trinket down. That's smart as well. It watches for invades. But this lets Alliance know they can push bottom for free. This lets them know there's no way they're getting ganked. They have vision on the top lane, vision of the mid lane, vision of the jungle, vision of the 2 guys bottom. There is no surprises whatsoever. This does tell Wicked. Actually, I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah. Now, Shook is taking his time going through the jungle. He's going to get level 3. No big rush for him, using his potion to stay at full health. And Alliance, by pushing the bottom lane, have forced the lane to reset. Now look at this. Look at the minions. There are more minions now for Dignitas than for Alliance. Now, I believe Alliance planned this whole thing. They planned for Shook to be done with his jungle and level 3. And on the bottom side of the map, by the time Dignitas was forced to push back down over here. I think it was planned. This could have been lucky and a really good adaptation, but I want to believe that teams have this kind of stuff in the back of their mind because it's a little bit weird for Elise to start at the blue buff, right? Alliance pushed early on. They wanted to know where Crumbs was. This feels like a little bit of a plan. If it doesn't pan out, that's fine. It's not going to happen every single game. You can't just say, oh, like clockwork, Alliance is going to have a 3.5-minute gank every game. But this is the kind of thing that you can set up, and if it pans out, then you're good to go. We've seen this with like early dragon plays, where like, hey, if the cards fall right, we can take a dragon. If not, just go back to your lane, no big deal. I think this kind of stuff happens more than we think in competitive play, because teams just practiced and like thought of this kind of mindset. So Shook is down here grabbing his red buff, right? Use his smite, whatever. Again, there's more minions, so we know that Dignitas are actually going to be pushing. Now, if you're QtPie, you can outplay this a little bit by using the time bombs, standing here and blowing up your own minions, and that would unpush your lane. Same for KiwiKid here. But now the lane, Alliance knows, at the very least, Alliance knows the lane is pushing. So they know they can force a gank here. So now watch what Alliance does. One of the interesting things, I'm going to pause one more time. There's two other things I want to talk about. Number one, Crumbs is seen right here. This ward is still alive. It's 3 minutes 20 seconds into the game. The first jungle path and the first chance at ganking is going to get spotted until 350 because of this ward. They know that Crumbs is not there for a counter gank. They know he is not coming top lane to stop Wicked, who is, by the way, look at this, 16-8. He is pushing relentlessly against Cruiser and is not getting ganked. And they know there's no counter gank bottom when Shook shows up. This is very much because of that level 1 ward. Alliance gets to play more aggressively than normal. The lane pushes down, Shook finishes his double golems. Now KiwiKid makes a nice play. He knows he's pushing, and he wards this river brush. The problem is it's just not enough for these guys. Now the other interesting thing is Alliance could have known that that was where the ward was, but whatever. They get the slow, they put the time bomb down, the flash Q is just enough to knock down KiwiKid. Now there's one minor misplay here. KiwiKid unfortunately dies too fast, so I can't really call it a misplay, but he learned W and tried to mantra W to heal here against Shook. It likely wouldn't have mattered anyway, but he actually almost survives this, kind of. I just thought I pointed out that he like learned W, he like leveled up while running away and almost got himself out. But again, right, level 2, Shook is freaking level 4, by the way. Because these 2 level 3s right here. And just pile drives KiwiKid. So that's really good. That's well played. And again, there's just no way that Crumbs could have shown up in time. So Crumbs is still trying to clear his jungle, trying to catch up, and he's just not going to. So really well played there. Good overall gank by Alliance. Let me check my notes again real quick. Yeah. Now the other interesting thing is, let's talk about ward timings. I'm going to keep kind of talking about the wards for a little bit. So trinkets, the warding trinkets have a 2-minute cooldown. Now, most people put their trinket wards down at about 1 minute 30 seconds, 1 minute 45, roughly, right? And with a 2-minute cooldown, you probably put your next one down around 3 minutes 30, 3 minutes 45. And because they last for 1 minute, they will last until 4:30 or 4:45, maybe even 5 minutes. So let me tell you guys a little thing real quick. If your opponents are more or less using their trinkets on cooldown, with like a little bit of overlap, like where they leave it up for a couple seconds, roughly every even minute is trinket warded, right? If you put it down at like 1:45, for most of the 2 minutes, right, 2 minutes till 2:55, most of that is warded. Goes on cooldown for 2 minutes. For most of 4 minutes to 4:55 is warded. As a really easy rule of thumb, if your opponent's trinket close to on cooldown, the even minutes tend to be trinket warded. Kind of a random thought, might work out for you guys, might be useful, might not. What's up is Crumbs comes to gank, and there's almost a guarantee that this tri-brush, and actually it's mostly going to be tri-brush, because Wicked's pushing all the time, there's a really high chance this is actually trinket warded, and in fact it is. And so Crumbs tries to gank, doesn't even have boots, it ends up being a bit of a waste of time, so he goes back into the jungle. Again, sort of well played by Wicked, that's all fine and dandy. In fact, part of what Crumbs did anyway was just put a ward down for Cruiser to allow him to stay in his lane. Which actually in retrospect is probably all Crumbs was trying to do, but again, that spot was still warded. Free damage to QtPie, whatever, he's going to be alright. Okay, there's most of my stuff on early game ward coverage. Right? The gank happened because Crumbs was spotted at every important time during the game. Now let's talk about a different topic. Let's talk about the lanes themselves, right? Again, we talked about Lucian being a lane bully, being really scary. Of course, these guys got the gank as well, and no surprise, Tabs is winning by an assist and by 5 minions against PewDiePie. PewDiePie's also running out of health. Yes, a lot of that happened due to Shook's gank, but this bottom lane is winning, which again, Alliance really needed. The mid lane is actually interesting because whereas Alliance knew where Crumbs was at all times, there was no vision on Shook almost ever. He showed up bottom lane, surprise, showed up bottom lane again, was still a surprise, and so Skara hasn't been able to push Froggen under his turret. You notice that at level 6, Froggen is actually winning in minions. This shouldn't really be the case. Gragas is supposed to win this lane matchup, at least early on, and I think it's partially due to being afraid of Elise, he's not able to. Skara is forced to play very defensively and very safe, and that makes it really rough. Now, Crumbs spends a lot of effort warding for his team. That's, fine and everything, but it also means he's kind of behind. Now, other interesting thing now is rotations. Let's talk about these a little bit. Because Dignitas, though they got behind a little bit, just saw Alliance try to recall. Kazmich got put a little bit low. Tab is actually recalling on top of a ward. Dignitas now knows, oh, they don't have anyone at the bottom lane. Great, let's go do this. Crumbs had Trinket warded Tribrush. They've got a ward over here in the river, another ward down here in the lane. And so Dignitas has an easy power play here over Dragon. This puts them back into the game. It's a really nice play by Dig to realize what was going on the map and saying, all right, we can do something to catch back up. This is good. This is a really, really good thing for Dignitas overall. They get this Dragon with no penalties whatsoever. But the interesting thing is I wanted to talk about bookkeeping, right? Because Dignitas shoved the bottom lane and then said, you know what? We're going to go do Dragon, and then we're going to recall. So Dig has been out of lane for close to a minute by the time... sorry, actually, no, PewDiePie goes back to lane. I take that back. Well, the thing is that PewDiePie, right, doesn't even do any bookkeeping. He's like, oh, there's still minions in my lane. So he clears Dragon, right, shoves the wave, shoves the bottom wave, clears Dragon, comes back into his lane. Now, Tabs, I think, slightly misplays this lane matchup. Because what he ends up doing is pushing the lane in. And you notice that on the bottom of the map right here, PewDiePie is back to his lane in time to take all the minions. If Tabs had frozen the wave, he could have frozen the wave in front of his turret, locked PewDiePie out of the lane because there's no way he can run down at half HP and no mana with no ultimate and sit there past the river with his support recalling. And so Tabs could have frozen the wave here. But because he wanted to go bookkeep and go buy some new items, he shoved instead, didn't actually penalize PewDiePie at all, but it does allow Tabs to buy a BF sword. So there's a distinction, right? Is if he wanted to stay in lane, he could have frozen out PewDiePie and really hurt him. Instead of doing that, though, he shoves so he can do bookkeeping. And you can see, is that better, is that worse? I don't necessarily know, but it's something worth pointing out here. That's just funny. It's a bit of a misplay by Dignitas. Crumbs actually might have died if he tried to tank the Javelin, but even in general, you should try to pull the Golem so it's getting blocked out by something. And then here's another one, right? Here's another one where, watch the bottom lane here. I believe Tabs pushes again instead of freezing. And again, this allows PewDiePie the ability to get back in the lane with almost no penalty whatsoever, and he's perfectly fine. And doesn't miss anything. So that's a little bit rough, unfortunately. Yeah, no, I take that back. Actually, no. So Tabs does seem to freeze this one. That's actually good. It does actually start denying some minions towards PewDiePie. That minion lead, I said it was like 5 before. It's up to 7, and it's going to keep growing. Tabs makes the right play this time, freezes the wave after getting his BF sword, denies golden XP from PewDiePie. And this actually pans out to be something really impressive. Because I'll go back into this jungle gank in a little bit. I want to talk about the bottom lane, then I'll come back to this clip. Because look at this. Tabs is 6, Kazmich is 5, PewDiePie is 5, Kiwi Kid's 4. So Tabs plays the lane mechanics a little bit better, and because of that freeze, has a level lead. The camera's going to come down to the bottom lane and watch. So Kazmich got a little bit caught. He had to flash, he had to burn ignite, he's pressing a lot of spells. Kazmich actually ends up dying. But Tabs is level 6. So he's going to dumpster the crap out of these Dignitas people right here. And he's going to juke around, he's going to do some plays, and then with the slow, just destroys Face really hard. Cutie Pie goes down, they trade kills, but it's worth it, and then Kiwi Kid goes down as well. So, lane control gets a level lead, hits level 7 now. Brutal. Now let's go back to what happened with the jungle invade. This is really freaking sexy by Shook. So Shook is right here, he's just taking his blue buff. This is about 8 minutes into the game. What's really cool about this is that Shook, if you remember the very beginning of the game, his jungle path was really interesting. He did Golem, Wolves, Wraiths, red buff, double Golems. He took his red buff very, very late. What this means, and again, remember, they had a Trinket ward on Crumbs' red buff. So what this means is that Shook knows your red buff is up, mine is not. If we meet in your jungle, there's no way you steal any of my buffs, but I get to fight you for yours. And this is really nice by Shook. And the downside for Dignitas is they still haven't warded the river. So Shook comes in without getting spotted. He's also a level ahead, and he gets to really put the pressure onto Crumbs here. Even though Crumbs has better items, double Doran's Blade, it doesn't matter. Shook has a level lead from his earlier fights. He gets to show up and basically creep jack Crumbs. Shook has a really good repel here, gets back in range, does some more damage, but just destroys that fight right there and steals away the red buff. That's really, really good play. Now, also look at one other thing on the map, right? So whatever, this fight still happens. The other thing that was interesting is this entire time, this entire game, Wicked has been pushing Cruiser into his base, or into his turret. Now, this is manifested in a 24 minion kill lead without recalling, just 24 minions straight up. Nothing's happened in this lane at all. And it's turned into Wicked gets to show up and help on this jungle invade. Notice that this recall, this is 2 recalls. This is the Olaf and the Shyvana both going back to base. Because Cruiser is like basically pushed out of lane. Notice these little blue dots in the minimap? That is because Wicked shoved the wave into the turret, showed up to help this jungle gank. Of course, so did Cruiser. But because the lane is pushed, now all of those Alliance top lane minions are now dying to the turret with no one around to grab the gold or experience. Shoving let Wicked show up to the fight. Shoving also denied Cruiser a bunch of golden XP because fights happen on the top side. This is why you typically want to at least have one lane pushing, although preferably all of them. And you always want to invade if that lane is already winning. Shook knows that Wicked is already winning his lane. Wicked will show up to the fight in time, and if both these guys leave the lane, it builds further advantage in Alliance's favor. All these things come together saying, great, obvious invade for Shook. Really awesome play. Works out amazingly well. And now, we come up with another topic. Again, let's think about Wicked up here in the top lane. He is now proxying the minion wave. And now, proxying a minion wave means killing the minion wave between your opposing turrets. So basically what that does is 2 things specifically. 1, the time between that minion wave dying and you recalling and the next minion wave reaching your turret is very long, right? The next minion wave has just started to spawn, and Wicked could recall almost right now if he wanted to, meaning he gets all of this time to recall, get back to his lane, and not miss gold or XP. That is the first thing you get by proxying, is it gives you a free recall. The other thing it does is it lets you take things like double golems, right in the bottom lane, double golems, top lane up here, double golems, whatever. It lets you get double golems. And the third thing is it lets you help with invades. Now, the invade's already done, so the invade actually just allowed Wicked to do that, but it's going to give him a free recall, and Cruiser just missed a wave. In fact, Cruiser, look at this wave right here. He's going to miss another wave, right? He missed the first one because he had to run away for this Shook jungle invade, and then he has to recall. The wave gets proxied by Wicked, and another one's going to suicide to the turret. So not only was Wicked already winning, he's winning even more now. And that is freaking rough. That is when you proxy. You never proxy 5 waves in a row. It's not useful. You don't get anything out of it. You proxy in order to unlock something else. And that is going, in this case, it is him getting a free recall. The minion wave dies mostly to the turret. In fact, you can see them dwindling right here. And Wicked gets back to lane with boots, most of a Sunfire cape. He's basically boots of speed ahead of Cruiser right now, and an extra ward and maybe a potion or so ahead of Cruiser right now. Now, again, there's a 20-something minion kill lead. Of course, Cruiser was given free Dragon Gold, so that's why he's not as far behind as he would be otherwise. But that's really, really big. Other thing that happened right now, as I was talking about that, Skara just recalled. Now, most of this game, Froggen has been clearing the wave and taking Wraiths. You can see him taking Wraiths right now, clearing the wave and taking Wraiths. As soon as Skara went back to base to buy a Chalice and a Phoenix Codex and Boots of Speed, Froggen, instead of taking Wraiths, went for the mid lane turret. He would be normally going for the turret the entire time, but he's afraid of Gragas all-inning him. So instead of getting all-in under the turret, he goes and takes Wraiths, but when Gragas is gone, he brings his turret down to 1/3 HP. This also matters. The weird thing about this game is everything happens at like the 8-minute mark, which is really hard for me to like take all my notes on. I end up pausing for like most of this game. But the 8-minute mark, everything happened for Alliance, right? 3 minion waves just swung in Wicked's favor. And in fact, again, I talked about freezing versus pushing. Cruiser right now shoves the top wave, and look, Wicked is back in time to miss literally 1 minion. He backed and missed 1 minion, whereas Cruiser missed 2 or 3 minion waves. That's huge. He's got a full level on his opponent right now. It's 8-7 up there, in addition to the 30 minions he's already winning by. So now Alliance knows that they can start creating a lot more pressure on the map. Top lane's already winning. Shook is huge. They know Crumbs is behind and very low threat. Right? No Ghost. He was a level behind Shook before. Frog is starting to win his lane, and this turret is now low on health. Alliance can show up to deal damage to the turret now. And in fact, Scar gets very, very low, and he's forced to recall very soon. Whatever. Bunch of free turret damage. Crumbs shows up, and they really just don't care at all. And this turret falls down very quickly. Now, Alliance still knows they have this advantage. Scar's on a half HP, Crumb's on a half HP. Even if they were full health, they're still weaker, despite the fact that Froggen hasn't gone to go buy any items yet. And so Alliance are in wonderful shape in the mid lane. And so here's what I love about top-level teams. When they get an advantage, they turn it into objectives, right? They are going to continually push this top lane. Froggen pumps the heal onto himself to get some more attack speed. Shook goes into melee form because Spiderlings deal damage and tank turret shots. And they get this turret down below half HP. There's one other interesting thing that happens as well, is that Froggen is now going to set up Wicked for even more success. He Trinket wards the Wraith Brush again. And Wicked, in proxying this wave, is going to Trinket ward this brush. So now, the one downside of proxying minion waves is that you can be ganked. That is now covered here by Alliance. That they are saying, okay, we've got an advantage. We've killed your mid lane turret. We're going to start owning your upper jungle here, because Wicked is winning by a lot. Our mid lane's winning by a lot. And we're going to make that part of the map win right here. They use strings to do this. Now, Dignitas, this is finally what they wanted to do. They finally get the level 6 Sivir ulti gank, and that's powerful. You can see how strong that is. They force the Zillion ulti. Any other champion probably would have died. But look how late that comes in. 11 minutes. You know, some of that is Crumbs getting behind. Level 6 at 11 minutes is very, very slow. So some of that is the lane dominance of Alliance. But consider how much Shook got to do with Elise. Kill a turret, force a recall, steal a buff, get a kill, because she just power spikes earlier, and Alliance uses that to get ahead in this game. And again, they just show back up to the mid lane. Alliance knows that, again, they are stronger here and just can deal damage and just can take turrets down. So 2 mid turrets go. Part of that was knowing Crumbs was down to the bottom lane. They had a 2v1 right there. Notice that Shook hasn't been in his jungle for about 3 minutes. And what Wicked has done this entire time, up in this top lane, is he proxied a wave, took one of the double golems, proxied the next wave, took the other golem and double golems, proxied a third wave, and he's going to get a recall right here. So this is the third wave that Wicked has proxied here, right? This is why you never want to proxy like 5 waves, is you at most basically proxy 3. So there you go. Gets the third wave, runs away, goes on the brush, gets a free recall, and this gives him Sunfire Cape. And again, it is a free recall. He's not going to miss anything to do this, but it locks Cruiser into the lane. So Wicked's going to come back to lane with a completed Sunfire Cape, and if Cruiser recalls right here, he misses a minion wave. Now, he goes and wards Tri-Brush, he goes and runs like around the map. He actually looks for his own double golems, I think, for a second, and ends up not getting to do anything right here. Right, again, walks back into his lane, doesn't get anything, not really a problem for Wicked. Wicked now has a Sunfire cape on his opponent. It's pretty freaking powerful. Once again, Cruiser tries to shove the wave to try to get his own recall, but again, Wicked is just very much more powerful than him. Okay, let me take a look at my notes again. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so this is the part where I want to kind of take a break real quick and say, okay, guys, here we are. Here we are in a game where basically the first 12 minutes all went Alliance's way. Every single lane was dominant. Mid lane shouldn't have been, but it was. Shook got a couple of really good ganks in the bottom lane. Dignitas had a really good dragon off of a recall rotation. But ultimately, by manipulating the bottom lane minions, they got ahead. Alliance got ahead and won a big fight, and they're just winning more and more and more right here. And you're seeing that there's not much that happens. However, what Dignitas wants to do is, again, we talked about this in the Champion Select. Dignitas, the only way they can fight their opponents is forcing dragons. They don't have very good siege. Their AD carry is short-ranged. They don't have any healing on their team. Gragas is pretty good at siege, but without blue buff. He runs out of mana trying to spam barrels out there. So Dignitas wants to go for a dragon. And the cool thing is, they could. Wicked went back to the top lane. Cruiser just ran all the way down and said, well, I don't have boots or a Sunfire cape, but I'm still Shyvana. And he shows up trying to force a dragon fight. And this would be good by Dignitas, but their bottom lane makes a mistake. Kiwikid does not rotate with the rest of the team. So blue buff, whatever, doesn't really matter. Shyvana comes down first. Dignitas has their team basically here and ready to go. Now Wicked recognizes this. He's going to come down very soon. He clears one more wave to maximize his individual growth. And then he's going to come down through the river, through the jungle, and he's going to show up for this fight. Now Wicked is on the wrong side of the map with Boots 1, trying to show up for a team fight. Now I'm a Cutie Pie, went through this tri-brush by his turret, and showed up for the fight right over here in the bottom left, in the bottom right. Kiwikid didn't do that. He ended up getting greedy for minion waves or something, or like he was told to hold the lane for a second, and that's, I think, a really bad call. Dignitas has a very small window of 5v4. They know they are the team that is behind. They're losing in minions, they're losing in kills, they're losing in turrets. They know they have less gold. And Dignitas don't force the dragon quickly. And I think that's actually a really big issue, because if they're all grouped together, there's 2 guys of Alliance on the top side, 2 guys of Alliance on the bottom side, and Dig could just push this down, and Kiwikid is in the wrong spot. And so Alliance makes this really good play to buy time. It's really freaking sexy. They use Shook to just basically dive bomb Cutie Pie, and they use a Zillion ulti to make him get out safely. So Dragon's down to half. Like, look at this. Dragon's at half. If Kiwikid were there, Alliance couldn't even try. Instead, Kiwikid is right here, next to the Lucian. He's next to Tabs, and gets pushed away from the fight, and goes down to like 1/3 HP. So it actually becomes a 4 versus 4, because Kiwikid doesn't do anything the entire time. And that's really, unfortunately, rough for Dignitas. So Cutie Pie gets hit, and they just go for it. And Shook knows, I have a Zillion. He's used to playing with Zillion. He just goes for damage output, not even a big deal. Cutie Pie doesn't die, but he's too weak to stay in the battle. Shook makes a good play, he gets out, right? Basically, all Alliance did was burn the Zillion ultimate to buy like 10 seconds of time, which lets Wicked come down. He's actually right here on the screen. And Dragon got reset. They used Zillion ulti to buy 10 seconds to force the rotation. Karma, still not in this fight, finally shows up, but it's too late. Dignitas are already screwed, and they lose control. So it was, I think, a bit of miscommunication by Dignitas. They didn't group their team together in time. It was a really good play by Alliance, because they managed to buy enough time to get themselves in an awesome situation. This is just a sexy move by Scar. This is like really good. Cutie Pie lands an amazing Q, and then Froggen goes down. But in general, right, like, really well played by Alliance, misplayed by Dignitas. And now, here we go. 14 minutes into the game, Alliance needed an early game lead. They built every lead but this one by their own hard work. This was a bit fortunate, but they got a lead now. So here we go. You're an early game team. You've only got 1 outer turret left to kill. You have a moderate gold lead. Like, we can actually compare what the differences are between these players, right? AD carries. I think actually, yeah, so unfortunately, there's no Bloodthirster yet for Cutie Pie. So their AD carries a really big lead. Mid laner, moderate lead. He has a needlessly large rod. Top lane, not that different. Warden's Mail is nice, but not huge. And then, of course, the jungle as well. So, like, a bunch of small advantages on Alliance, and they're going to use that to snowball the lead. They don't rest on their gold lead. They grab more while they're still ahead, while they still have item spikes. And as a brief note on the Warden's Mail, Alliance knows they can't slow this game down. They cannot let Dignitas just sit there and wave clear, so Wicked normally would go for a Spirit Visage. You've got magic damage from Karma, magic damage from Shyvana, magic damage from Gragas. Spirit Visage is a great item on Renekton, especially against the Dignitas lineup, but Wicked knows he needs to be able to tank turrets, so he goes Randu and Zoman after Sunfire Cape in order to allow him to dive more strongly. Wicked goes back to that 4-1 split. You can see he goes to the top lane, takes away the turret. He's been winning that lane the whole time. He wants to make sure that they get all those advantages. And now, here we go. Actually, I misspoke earlier. We don't have all 3 outer turrets. The secondary mid turret went down a while ago. But Alliance just says, okay, we've built the advantage top lane. Wicked has now created enough pressure that he's going to go rejoin the team. Now, this is interesting because once you're at this point in the game, level 12 or so, now he's got a level lead over Cruiser. But if Wicked sits there and lanes against Cruiser any longer, so Wicked was stronger at the beginning, right? First few levels kind of grows for a while, and it starts to even out as these guys level up. Cruiser will start to get ahead of him. That's important to mention because if Alliance with his early game team sits there and says, all right, well, let's go laning phase, Dignitas outscales them. It is on Alliance to do things with this team. So the turret goes down, Wicked shoves the wave, then goes and shows up somewhere else with his team. And they all show up for the bottom lane. Right, they've cleared the mid lane wave. That was what Froggen had done. Shook just kind of put some pressure down mid, but he's pretty much safe here. It's not that big of a deal for him. But the rest of Alliance has come down to the bottom side of the map, and they're now creating pressure on this bottom outer turret. They're saying this is the next easiest thing for us to get. We can continue to build a gold and level lead if we can push these turrets down, and the entire team has shown up now to surround what is a would-be Dignitas defense. And they're like, okay, we can't defend that. All 5 of Alliance are here. We're going to give this one away. Alliance gets this one for free. Now, I also want to point out what Wicked has helped do. When Wicked rotated down, he put wards down. So did Shook, so did Froggen. This upper jungle, every single entrance to the upper jungle, every single way you can basically get in outside of going like through the waves down to double golems and then hiding, is entirely owned by Alliance. The rotation over on this side, both in all the major entrances into the upper jungle on the right side, are owned by Alliance. If you want to go down the mid lane and do something, that is owned by Alliance. This is the line that Dignitas is allowed to cross. Way up here, Alliance owns all of this. Because they said, okay, we have a lead, we have the vision as our advantage, we've pushed everything out, we're going to ward all of those as little outposts to say we're not going to lose that territory again. Wards basically guarantee that you keep your territory if you play it properly. So Alliance, they own this part of the map. This is a really weird engage by Dignitas. They don't even have 5 people yet, and they know all 5 of Alliance are here. It's a really weird play. So it's actually a misplay by Dig. And so they kind of run away from this one. And because of that, they actually lose a lot of health bars. This is actually, again, this is a misplay by Dig, and it gives Alliance control of this bottom lane. And so Dig's going to kind of like phone it in. They're going to like try to wave clear, but they can't really. So they basically get to clear 1 minion wave, and then they have to give this one up. So Skara Bees, Alliance keeps trying to siege. They're going to get this, of course. And they just put a team together, tossed out skill shots, landed some of them, and forced Dignitas away. There we go. Now it's 5 turrets for Alliance. Another great situation for these guys. And now watch what already happened. Look how well coordinated Alliance are. They knew they already had this turret. Look where Wicked went. Wicked is already going across the map. Alliance already knew they had that turret. They had a gold lead, and Scar was out of the fight. So at worst, it was a 4v4 with a gold lead, which is fine. And Dig has no engage because they burned Sivir ulti, and they have no Gragas. So Dig cannot engage. And it's a 4v4 with a gold lead. So Alliance knows that turret's theirs, and they already sent Wicked, right, this 4-on-1 split we talked about, they've already sent Wicked to go push top. And so off he goes to go push top, and he sets up top lane for the team. Alliance, they're going to do, this is funny, this is like aggressive bookkeeping. It's like, we're going to clear 1 more wave because we can, and it guarantees us more map control. But like, we're just going to kill these minions, and then go the heck to top lane. They're just going to peace out. And you know, Eric Froggen kills the minions on his way across the map. Shook runs over, like, in full vision of the enemy team. They don't care. They know top lane's already been set up. And now, you know, this Tabs is a little bit isolated. This is a bit risky from Alliance, but they risk Tabs bottom lane and say, you don't really have engage. Civ Royalty is actually still down right now. And so Tabs stays bottom. I don't know if this is necessarily the best play for these guys. I think Tabs just got isolated. But he ends up pulling 2 people. He has the entire bottom lane of Dignitas standing there bottom lane. Whereas Alliance has 4 guys top, and they're like, great, we could already set up this turret for us. We're going to keep the pressure on. We're going to get all 6 turrets. Great. Perfect setup here. They already got control of bottom lane. They sent Wicked to set up top lane. The rest of the team showed up to follow through on the setup. And now it's 6 turrets to 0, 5 kills to 2. And again, ward control still all here for Alliance. Really well played by these guys. Really good setup. They've done everything pretty much perfectly. I'm going to check my notes real quick and make sure. They get this on the way out. This is actually pretty much free. Okay. So my note then was, all right, we have all 6 turrets. Now what? It's only 18 minutes. We're not big enough to dive. Maybe. Wicked rushed a Randuin's Omen. 18 minutes for Sunfire Randuins is hella fast, but he's got it. He's really powerful. He's really tanky. He's going to make life miserable for Dignitas. Froggen, he's got Death Cap on top of Athenes. I mean, he's really power spiked early. This is a situation where an early game team really worked out and got their advantages. But they've basically got the ability to poke and siege and then dive if they need it. And that is why I like Wicked's item adaptation, is he is there because he is able to dive turrets and take a few shots here. So Alliance bookkept, right? They bookkept. They all recalled. They all bought their items. Notice how pushed all the minion waves were and how much word control they had, so that there was nothing Dig could do. Alliance all backed, and the best Dig could do was get the minion waves back to mid, like, river. And that was it before Alliance came back. That is why you take the time to clear the minion waves out and then recall back and be safe. Dig couldn't rush Baron. They're not powerful enough at 18 minutes. Dig couldn't push a turret down because the minions were too far in. Really tight play here by Alliance. Now, this ends up being really fortunate. The way this game ends up ending is Alliance catches 2 really, really good javelins. And 2 really good cocoons as well. So, again, Scar running out of health. The team shows up again. Yeah, Alliance gets poked a little bit. Ultimately, it doesn't matter that much. Kazmich burns his Talisman of Ascension. They're just kind of sitting there sieging because ultimately they're not going to kill Baron fast enough, and it's going to be really obvious when they go for it. And their own catch is not that good that, like, setting up a Baron dance is even that strong for these guys. But here's the catch. Skara screws up. He wants to engage the fight. This is what I'm talking about. So this fight ends up being really close. Shook is forced to revive. The rest of Alliance down below half HP, and Dignitas only lost Skara, who got caught. Now, Skara, if he had gotten to ulti, look at these health bars. If Skara had gotten to ult and knock Alliance into his turret and into the rest of the team, this would have been really hellish. This would have been really good, but cocoons keep landing, javelins keep landing. It's really just screwing with Dignitas a whole lot. But bookkeeping, right? Again, it's Alliance knows. This isn't even bookkeeping, really. This is like, Alliance knows that Dignitas just got full health and mana. They have home guards, their top laner, their jungler, and their AD carry. They're all at full health. Alliance are really frail right now. They're just going to back off, be safe. They clear the waves, and they've still got enough vision. This is actually very important. Alliance has enough wards, these 2 right here, that they know taking this red is not a big risk. It is oftentimes risky to be like, okay, we got pushed out of the base, but before we go, I'm going to take your jungle and get caught. This happened to me. It's happened to a lot of you, I'm sure. The ward coverage was enough, though, from Alliance to allow them to take control of this jungle, though, and take that away and not get caught out. Part of that was some of Dignitas was dead. Part of it is Dignitas doesn't have any items right now, but again, that's a very scary situation. You've got to assess that situation properly and say, actually, I'm going to be safe here. We're going to be all right doing this one. But it's a thing to keep in mind. Okay. So they got the middle inhibitor turret down. They went back and did, again, some bookkeeping. They're adding more items. Froggen got a blasting wand. Merc treads, I don't like on Wicked, but he added them. Trinity Force, Bloodthirster, both done for tabs. Talisman Ascension was already done. Leandry's Torment completed now here for Shook. So, all right. Look at the split again. right? The team is kind of like Froggen went and took the top lane, right? He cleared some minions there, but no big deal. He's not pushing too hard because his wards got swept out. Notice how little vision control there is and how little he's pushing as a result of that. One ward, pieces out. Bottom lane, very little, but Wicked is going to start this up. And look, the entire team shows up here to try to help get control of this, and Wicked is by himself setting up the bottom wave that the rest of the team can group up and push. That is what Alliance is going for here. He's going to keep setting that up. They're going to go for the free dragon. Froggen is still coming across the map to join his team. Notice that this entire route is covered in wards or minions as Wicked comes up, so this dragon is safe as well. All right, Alliance are not doing anything without knowing if they're going to get jacked. It's really smart. And here we go, right? Wicked by himself pushed the wave up. They've grouped now one wave before the turret. Now, to be fair, Dignitas are here in time to defend, but that's always going to be the case. Once you're down to the inhibitor turrets, your opponents are always going to be there. You're not really going to out-rotate them. Some teams will do like 3-1-1 or 4-1-0 splits and try to have one guy push a turret and the rest of the guys push another turret. Alliance, I think, is better suited just sitting here in a big group, which is fine because they can just work their opponents down with javelins. But they get another catch. It's really fortunate, but they kill off Skara. They have just enough ways of picking up openings because of the Elise and the Nidalee that they're just ahead. And the thing is, if this were 20 minutes later, Skara would just throw a barrel and guys just run in. Right? They would just dive because F it. There's no way that that Alliance could deal with Shyvana Olaf. Even that where Skara got killed for free. Again, a lot of damage. Shook's down to half, Tab's below half, Wicked's down to half. And this is Wicked with Sunfire, Cape, Rando, and Zoman at 20 minutes. The damage is here from Dignitas almost, but it happened all too quickly from Alliance. And so they made sure they kept the pressure on. Every single kill they found, they opened for a turret. Every gold lead they had, they turned it into pressure onto a turret. A lot of really good play. They just have control. This is obviously a really easy turret. It's a really easy inhibitor as well, and Alliance just has this game right now. The game ends very soon, but it's kind of interesting to point out that Dignitas didn't get whitewashed in those battles. I mean, they lost for sure, and I mean, 9-2 is a pretty convincing score, but again, if they were like 2,000 or 3,000 gold another way, Dig would have been fine and probably able to battle these, but Skara got caught twice in a row, unfortunately, and wasn't able to do much in the fights when he was honestly his only initiator. He was the only initiator for the team, and he didn't get to cast his spells to initiate the battle against an honestly very squishy team. And so, yeah, Alliance kind of groups up. At this point, the game is basically over. I'm going to fast forward slightly. Yeah, that was a fail. Black screen! There we go. All right. Yeah, Skara tries a barrel. Tabs ends up dodging it with his E. He gets knocked back, but whatever. And actually, I went too fast. Okay, so let's go into actually closing the game out for real at this point. So Alliance have 2 inhibitors dead. They could go for Baron, theoretically, and like risk it, or they could just simply ride in with a minion wave and just go for the Nexus. So a little bit of ward coverage, right? They still want to make sure they're not getting ganked too badly. They don't really find anything on the crumbs. The minion waves for the most part are in good shape, but they send Wicked to the top lane, right? He's always the odd man out. He is always the guy who goes in there, is too big for any one person to deal with ever for always. And he takes the top lane, sets it up, says, okay, if we wanted to push top, we can. It's here if you want it. The rest of Alliance recalls. They do their bookkeeping, right? This is by the book game ending. Now, Dignitas are getting a little bit of free golden XP because there's the mid lane and the bottom lane both are pushing in, and they're killing all of Dig's minions without anyone around, so there's no gold or XP going to Alliance, whereas like Cruiser or Crumbs or Scar or someone can take some of that gold. If you kill inhibitors and do nothing at all with it, you will allow your opponents back into the game. But taking 2 minion waves to bookkeep, get full health and mana, and buy again is worth it. So Wicked comes, he's the last one to go back because he was clearing the top lane. Froggen shows up to make sure that the top lane doesn't get sieged out by Crumbs or anyone, which kind of controls that. And it's like, all right, Alliance, you're in control again. And they do one thing that's really interesting as well that I like, is they use Wicked again as bait to set up for Baron as their way to win the game. So really easy ward clearing right now by Shook and Kazmich, that's fine. But basically, they leave Wicked in the mid lane and say, if you leave me alone, I literally will kill your Nexus. The bottom lane has a bunch of minions coming in. You can see the giant blue blob. Wicked's actually sitting around in the mid lane as well. He's actually trying to create pressure here. He's basically kind of bullying and bodyguarding. And then when that goes down, it's like, all right, guys, well, you couldn't deal with me. We're good to go. I'm going to go do cool things now. And so it was a really just like an easily controlled Baron. It's not a very difficult one when you're that far ahead, but they kind of made sure that there was a lot of things going on. Qdoba had to hold the bottom lane. Wicked's just kind of running around in the front. Like, this is basically over at this point. And Alliance really earned it. And just Wicked is just gigantic at this point. He just doesn't take very much damage from the team. Scar, unfortunately, does not land a very good explosive cask and just gets kind of dropped at this point. So that's game. Alliance wins that one with an early game-focused team. They made a couple of really good plays in setting up for that second dragon by using the Zillion ultimate plus Shook to buy some time. That allowed Wicked to rotate. Alliance the entire time pushed, had the ward coverage to see... had the ward coverage to see... my brain's AFKing, I apologize. The ward coverage to see where Crumbs was going, and they ultimately set that game up for a whole lot of success. So really, really well played in that one. I really like that game from Alliance. I think they played their comp pretty well.